Good morning, everybody. Welcome to our live today. I'm so grateful to have you all joining us, and very grateful to have my lovely friend and MBSR meditation teacher, Emma Reynolds, joining us on our live today. I'm having trouble with my light, so it's going to flicker in my face. My apologies for that. Anyone who knows me knows that technology and I are not really good friends. So we just have to, every video I start has a messy start. Anyway, so mindfulness, all about mindfulness, Emma, right? I just breathe and accept that that's the way things are, and eventually we get there.
It's a perfect opportunity to come to acceptance right at the very beginning of the session.
Absolutely. So Emma, I'd love you to get us started this morning, because I know, first of all, to perhaps introduce yourself, and then to perhaps start with a little practice to have us experience mindfulness as we go through our live today.
Yes. Okay. So thank you, Charlene. Thank you for inviting me on. It's lovely to be here, and lovely to see that we've been joined with other people today. So yes, I am a mindfulness teacher. I help people deal with stress and anxiety and body pain as well, body discomfort. And I thought maybe today we would just start with a little practice to allow ourselves to just arrive in the present moment. How lovely might that be? So if you are listening, I invite you to just join in. It's only going to be a minute long. Okay, so just allow yourselves to sit upright. Okay, and allow your shoulders to relax. Close your eyes or lower your gaze. Just take a moment to take a long, slow, deep breath. Okay, but just nice and light. Don't heave the breath in. Perhaps as though you're smelling a rose or something delicious. And just allowing any pockets of tension in your body just to relax a little, to drop back and do less. So just checking in with your jaw, maybe your shoulders, and then maybe noticing how your stomach is right now. Often when we get a bit stressed, we can feel tension there. So just seeing if there's any tightness. And perhaps just placing a hand on the belly button. And as you breathe in, you can just feel your breath moving in, filling the hand. As you breathe out, that hand drops back. And just see if you can follow your breath for 3 breaths. So breathing in, breathing out in your own time. Nowhere to go, nothing to do. Just be with your breath. And then just becoming aware of the whole body sitting here. Head, shoulders, bottom on the seat, feet on the floor. And little by little, just giving your body time to maybe do some stretching, rolling the shoulders. Maybe just looking around the space where you are, reorientating yourself back into your room, back into this moment. And maybe just noticing how you feel right now, if it's any different from before. Okay.
Great, Emma, thank you. It's a great way to start anything in your day.
Yeah, right.
Learned that from you, certainly. So, Emma, would you like to introduce yourself? Yeah, you can do it better than I can. So, other than saying what a lovely friend you are, and a beautiful person, and an incredible teacher, and very inspiring woman who's transformed her life quite significantly from the work that you previously did to becoming a mindfulness teacher. So, yeah, if you'd like to share anything about that journey so that people know who you are, that would be fantastic.
Thank you, Charlene. Thank you for all those compliments. I'm not quite sure I deserve them all, but thank you. I think
I only speak the truth.
Someone behind me. So let me explain a little bit maybe how I got into MBSR, because that's often quite interesting. I have always been someone with a very busy mind, and I've used that, in a very creative mind, and I've used it for its good and for its bad. So when it was good, when I was focusing it in the right way, let's say, I could be very creative. I worked in theatre. I was a voice artist. I still am a voice artist. Literally art, making music, singing, all sorts of lovely, wonderful creative things that we're all capable of doing. And it also, that wonderful imagination also took me into some really dark places. And all through my 20s, I struggled with depression. In my 30s, I went, I can't be this person anymore. I need to go and talk to a therapist, which was mortifying, beyond mortifying, having to, own up that I wasn't absolutely perfect. And it was great, and it helped me a lot. But and then there's nothing wrong with therapy. I'm not saying anything against therapy. I think therapy is wonderful, but it does have a tendency to dig back into the past. And although it was useful to look into the past, for me, what I really needed to do is know what the hell to do. I'm in the middle of, a supermarket. It's all taking too long. And I'm time pressured, and I am feeling overwhelming emotions of anger, frustration. I might go and say something to somebody, or anxiety, I'm not going to get this done in enough time. And I had no tools. I had no tools to know what to do with myself in those moments. I would either act upon them, or I would eat them, and that would just create more, problems with myself in some way, and slide me off into a bit of depression again or whatever. And when I came to mindfulness, which I came to quite late, really, I was 41, I had a baby, and I just got hit by this overactive mind. I was running a company, 16 people, who could at any time ask me a question at 3 a.m. about something, which I would then have to problem solve or manage in some way. And then I had a baby. I had no sleep. I felt quite lonely. And it was a crisis. It was a life crisis. And so I just went, okay, I need to do something about this. And just completely by luck, I found this app, my Headspace, and it just started to change my life, really. I started to sit down and do 10 minutes of meditation every day. Most of it I was doing actually sleeping, because I was so tired from having a newborn baby. But bit by bit, after about 6 months, I realized actually this is doing something. I don't know how, just taking 10 minutes every day is starting to change the way that I function in life. And first of all, it was just noticing, oh, you're getting angry, you're getting frustrated, I was terribly impatient, and do something about it. And then little by little, I noticed there would be circumstances that would have completely triggered me, that I didn't even go there anymore. I was like, oh my God, this is like magic. I need to find out more about this. So I moved from meditation into MBSR, which is mindful-based stress reduction, which is still very much meditation, but it also explores much more about what is stress. I mean, literally, I'm still amazed, because I was one of those people, but still amazed that a lot of people don't even know what stress is, why we have it, like why does the body react in this way? And then from there, like what we can do about it, how we really have a lot of things stacked up against us. We have a negativity bias, so we're constantly looking for problems. We have a fight and flight mechanism, which will kick off at even just the suggestion of a threat. And when I say a threat, I mean literally an email arriving, or having to leave the house. There's change, and our amygdala in the back of our brain that sends out a message to say, oh, there's a possible threat, doesn't even like that. It doesn't. Now we can kind of control that to a certain extent, but not everyone. So how do you deal with your internal landscape, with all our worry, thoughts, emotions, body sensations, pain, illness, discomfort? And how do we deal with all of that out there that we have no control over? This person's being rude to me. This situation's not going how I want it. How can we meet all of that? and not just lose it basically on a, on a continual basis, right? And so when I came to MBSI, I went, yeah, these are the tools. I felt like somebody had given me the manual for life. Mm. And I mean, that sounds pretty powerful, but that is how powerful it was, because I didn't have any training in this thing called being a human being on this planet.
No,
you know,
most of us don't.
I didn't.
Right.
I didn't get it from my parents. I got like the opposite of what might be useful to do in a stressful situation. You know, either don't, you know, basically don't talk about it. Don't talk about it, suppress it, pretend it's not there, even though there's like chaos all around. Just squash it down and carry on. You know, very British, stiff upper lip, to the detriment of one's mental and physical well-being.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think unfortunately sometimes people have to get to the crisis point before they look at this, and it's such a shame. I mean, it's true. It's like people go, this is awful, but I'll carry on, this is awful, I will carry on, and at some point it just is that tipping point. People go, I just cannot do this any longer. And that's when they finally go, okay, I need to go and talk to you, to a therapist, I need to go and sit down and do some meditation. I need to just do something. I don't know what it is in the human psyche, but it's like we will hold on and resist change, because it is change that's being offered, even though it's positive change. We resist it for a very long time.
Well, I think that's actually the point, really, isn't it? That for most of us, we all need a certain amount of certainty in our lives, and sometimes even the problems we have are feeding that need for certainty and for feeling significant. You know, most of the people in my world know I talk a lot about 6 human needs, and those drive that behavior. And change, as you said, even if it's a positive one, if it takes us out of that need for what we know. And you know, sometimes also for some of us, a lot of us, I can include myself in this, you know, we feel our story of how our life is and how difficult it is makes us feel kind of important and significant. You know, having a big problem is sometimes as much of feeding that need to feel significant. So and it's true, and I find that even with, as you said too, with my clients, often it's that getting to, this is just can't tolerate it any longer. And you know, I would really love to see the day, you know, my sort of vision is that people come to what you're talking about, that, you know, that it starts before we need it, you know, or before we realize we need it, or, you know, that sort of prevention, or not even prevention, but sort of having the tools so that we don't get to that place of desperation. That's sort of my vision for the world, in a way. I mean, I work a lot in education as well, and I've worked with teachers, and I'm so excited, like big publishing companies, you know, I'm working with one at the moment that go, we really need, and I know it's on topic and everything else, but it's like, whatever, as long as it's going into the schools, fantastic. Because teachers are very stressed, and then they model, you know, for how long is your child at school for? They're like another parent. And if you've got a teacher that's modeling stress, anxiety, frustration, and this is how you deal with things in life, then, you know, that's not good for the kids. It's not good for the teachers, clearly, either. So, you know, I'm really excited about working in that area where, you know, teachers are finally getting some tools to go, how do I look after myself, first of all? I'm stressed, I'm tired, I'm frustrated. Let me not take that into the room with me and then, you know, teach that to 30 children every single day. And then as they become inspired by that, then they go, yeah, oh my God, these are like amazing life skills, you know, life tools. Let me take this into the kids. And literally what we did just, you know, at the beginning of the session, where we just stop, close our eyes, notice our body, allow tension to release, recognize just how we are without trying to change it, is already a significant change to move into the next moments of one's day more present, you know, more concentrated, maybe possibly a little bit happier as well. I love the, you know, that what you talk about, not trying to change it, it's a really challenging one. You know, certainly something, because, you know, I've worked with you. You've been my meditation teacher. I've attended your beautiful walks in nature. We've been into forests. We've been into the lovely retreats that you had in France that I went to, and the courses that you've done in Barcelona as well that I've attended. And, you know, this thing about it's really easy to slip into that language of wanting to change something. You know, it's like, if we don't like what's happening, we need to fix it. And you know, that happens also a lot with my clients. You know, I often have women coming saying, you know, my relationship would be great when my partner does this for me and does that for me, and I just want to change that. And, you know, or something about myself. If I change this, then I know everything will be all right. I'd love to hear a little bit more about how you see mindfulness supporting that, and what is this thing about, you know, how do we sit with I'm not happy with how things are, I'm not comfortable with what's going on, something needs to shift. You know, it's like that I'm depressed, you know, that experience you had of, you know, something needs to be different. How does that relate to mindfulness and this idea that letting go of wanting to change things? I guess
it's deeply, when I first came to
paradoxical, isn't it?
There's just paradoxes everywhere. It's like, okay, so people, you know, come and pay to do a course, and then I go, the first thing you've got to learn is you're not trying to get anywhere. And they're like, well, what are you talking about? And I go, and the second thing is you've come to a stress reduction course, and I warn you now, it's going to be stressful. And they're like, can I get my money back? Because where to begin with this? So for example, I sometimes have people, I talk to them about what I do, and they go, oh, I love this idea. Oh, my partner is so stressed. Oh, I want to sign them up. Where can I sign them up? And I go, okay, so why do you want to sign them up? Because they're stressed. Okay, and what's wrong with them being stressed? Well, because it's a nightmare, and they're rude, or they're, you know, aggressive, or they're whatever. And it's like, right, and how does that affect you? Well, I don't like it. And I go, okay, so is it that you really just want to be happy? I mean, do you want to just be peaceful and calm? And you go, yeah, and I can't be because he or she is this way. And I'm like, right, would you like to be calm and peaceful however they are? It's like, well, that's not possible because I'm in relationship with this person. I'm like, yeah, well, even just take that person out. You're in relationship, first of all, with yourself. Can you be at peace with yourself in your worst moments? When you're stressed, when you're angry, when you're frustrated? And it's like, possibly no, right? So let's start there, because maybe if you learn to find a way to be with yourself, which is acceptance, in those darkest moments, you start to realize that this thing that seems to overwhelm you, anxiety, stress, anger, isn't quite as big as you think, that you are actually much bigger. So, you know, I had it this morning. I had a moment this morning where something I wanted to happen wasn't happening. And I just went, okay, I feel it. I totally feel it. I feel really disappointed and a bit frustrated. And I went, here's that moment of practice, right? I don't choose to be frustrated or judgmental. It just happens. But when it happens, I then have a choice. If I'm aware enough, I go, aha, it's arrived. A minute ago, I was okay. Now this thing has arrived called frustration. Can I look after it in some way? Before, it would just overwhelm me. But now it's like, no, I am aware of this experience coming. It's come with a whole bunch of thoughts, planning, wanted it to be a different way. It's having an emotional effect on me. It's having a physical effect on me. You know, my stomach is tightening. I'm feeling a little bit hot. Can I sit with all of that and not want it to change? Right? Normally we spend basically our whole lives are coping mechanisms, right? How can I not deal with this in here? I will drink, I will go to work, I'll even become a therapist, you know, anything to sort of fix it all in some way. And yet mindfulness is like, what if you don't? What if you don't try to change it? What if by the very act of not trying to change it, what may be a product of that is change begins to happen. And what if you don't sit down and try and not have thoughts, but magically, if you just give that up, you may actually find that you start to relax a little bit in your body and your mind. So it's hugely paradoxical. The only way I can really explain, because people are like, I still don't get it. It's like, well, imagine you've got a child who is stressed and anxious. Okay. Do you go, right, we need to fix you right now? This is it. Stop doing, let's try all those tactics that we try. Stop doing this. Let's just ignore this. Let's just pretend this child isn't here, and that's not working. Okay, let's just try and get it to go and do something else. That works for a bit, but then it comes back because it's still got that anxiety, and it may come back in 5 minutes. It might come back in 6 months, but at some point it will come back. It's like it's just going to keep turning up. What if you turn to that child and you're just with it? And you let it express itself in some way. You listen. What's wrong, my love? I'm really anxious because X, Y, and Z. Okay, and how's that making you feel? All this tension in my stomach, and my heart is really tight. Right, yeah. Wow. Can you feel yourself breathing? Yeah. And that's it. Because when we get anxious, it's a thought that triggers our fight and flight mechanism. It sends adrenaline and cortisol around our body. We become tense, we become tight, we're ready to literally fight, but there's nothing to fight because the only thing that's actually here is a thought. So how do we get ourselves out of the experience of feeling anxious? Because we feel anxious. Even though we think anxious, we feel anxious, and that's the bit's uncomfortable, right? I don't want to feel this tightness here and here. How can I come to this? By looking after the body. So we don't get involved with the mind. We don't try and fix the problem of I'm feeling anxious because X, Y, and Z for the moment. Let's just come to the body and calm the body down first of all. And often the mind will then go, oh. But if it doesn't, and like literally, just to talk about an example, my son, one morning, he's 8 now, was acting up, and being very about things. And I was like, okay, I know you're about to go to summer camp, so there's something going on here. What's going on? And I was like, what's the thought? I just go straight there. What's the thought? Well, last time I didn't like it, didn't want it, and it's gonna be awful. And how's that making you feel? Anxious. Okay, right. Let's just, put a hand on the heart, put a hand on the belly. Let's calm the body down a little bit. And then when he's a little bit calmer, because when you're in fight and flight, the prefrontal cortex part of your brain, the thinking part of your brain, is literally flipped out of the way. Okay, so now we've got you calm again. Let's come back into this part of the brain with thinking, to be rational. What's the thought? You're fearful of the future. Do we know anything about the future? No. What we're doing is pulling up old memories and then projecting them onto the future. And now you've got anxiety because you were a little bit anxious last time, and now you're anxious for a future experience. But what's the reality? Do you know how this is going to go? No. So here's one option. It's going to be terrible. It's going to be the worst thing you ever do in your life. Here's another option. It's not bad. Here's another option. It's okay at some points. It's really boring in other moments. Here's another option. Well, you meet some nice people and you have a bit of fun. Here's another option. It's like, look at all these options now. And I could literally see his face brighten as he realized, like, oh God, yeah. I've just been on this tunnel vision, which is your fight and flight mechanism. It's like when you're in fight and flight, you don't look around and go, well, there's other options. It's like, I'm just running for my life, right? I'm in my tunnel. So when you open that up and go, yeah, there's loads of other possibilities here. Then we step into, just to finish, we step into the unknown. And the problem with our minds is that when we don't know, and the future is completely unknown, right? We've never been there, that the mind goes, I don't know how this is going to go, so I'm going to pull past experiences and imprint them on the future. And therefore, I now know how it's going to go. And even if the story is terrible and atrocious and suffering, at least I know. Thank you very much.
So, Emma, this is the stuff that I love the most about what you talk about. I mean, you always have amazing gems of wisdom around this stuff, and I just love it because working as a coach, and in my own life as well, I see this all the time, that we so limit ourselves about what our choices are, and there is, as you said, no choice when you come from that fear, fight and flight, with that tunnel vision. And it happens in relationships. You know, people are living constantly, we all live constantly in what happened last time, you know, as you said, and you know, being in the present moment. And you know, when I'm working with couples, having them be present to each other in this moment, without all the, but last time he said that, or I know this person because this is what they've always done. When the truth is, you know, and often the irony is that you have somebody who's saying, I've changed, and you know, forgetting the fact that actually their partner probably has as well, if they've been in a relationship for a long period of time, and what they might be choosing, or how they might react to something. If they're not given the space to behave in a different way, then they can't either. And we just trigger each other's kind of flight and fight, and then it just all goes down a terrible tunnel. And that can happen in a really short space of time. You can be in a relationship for 6 months, and if you're somebody that likes that certainty of knowing how somebody else is, you can bring that same thing in 6 months into a relationship where I know how he's going to respond, I know what she's going to say, and then the fear comes up of how that person's going to react, and then you've got that whole story built up already, so that there's no room for anything else to even happen. Even if it could. Yeah, and it's just so powerful. And when we were talking the other day, you were talking, you know, because we spoke about it, or the sort of title of this has been acceptance, like the stories that we tell ourselves versus reality. Can you, and you sort of speaking a little bit about that, can you talk a bit more about that, and maybe some examples that you've come across?
Well, what is suffering and what is stress? It is the inability to accept reality. Okay, so here's reality.
Oh, that's beautiful. Say that again, because I think that's,
I don't know if I can. Suffering and stress is the inability to accept reality. So here's reality, and here's how we want it. And when they're the same, then we're happy. You know, your morning's going okay, the alarm clock went off, your clothes fit you, you can get them, you know, there's no mess anywhere, you just get to work, it's all right, it's fine, no problem. Everyone was in alignment, more or less. The moment you wake up and it's not, you know, you've missed your alarm, now we get into the whole shouldness, right? I should have got up earlier. This is reality. This is how it should have gone. And that space between the two, we call it like the discrepancy monitor. There's a discrepancy. Here's reality. Here's how I want it. Imagine you can either get yourself in a complete mess about how annoyed you are that the alarm clock didn't go off, right? And suffer from that and spend the whole morning going, I can't believe, and now this, and or you can step into a place of acceptance. Okay, this has happened, right? It's already happened. It's not like it's about to happen. It's already happened. It's in the past. There's a great quote from Byron Katie. You know what I love about the past? It's already happened. So it's like, it's already done. So this is now new reality. Who said that you should always wake up with your alarm clock? It's happened. This is the day you don't. Now, how are you going to meet it? With all of this emotional stress or a calmer place? And so acceptance is really the first invitation to go, this is how it actually is. Okay, how can I now meet this? What do I need to do? I need to recognize what's happening. I'm having a bunch of thoughts saying no, 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 no. That's creating, what would I call that? Anxiety, stress, frustration in my body, because we feel our feelings. That's why they're called feelings. We feel them. Right, let's take a deep breath. Let's get the prefrontal cortex back online. We're not being chased by a tiger. Let's think, prioritize, get going. And then also to zoom out and go, in the great scheme of things, you know, is this worth me killing my adrenal glands, giving myself, you know, a heart attack by pushing my heart rate up? Or is it actually just, we're a little bit late this morning? Okay, let's be calm, let's be clear. And in that moment, you may be therefore more successful at actually getting things done, you know, quickly. It's not like you can't be mindful and quick, you know.
Yeah,
can
most
be
people think
very
of
aware.
mindfulness as being zen and everything
Slow.
moving
So
slowly. Yeah.
no, it's like I'm aware that in this moment, I always remember running through an airport thinking I was going to miss a flight, and I went, this is one of those practices, is one of these life practices. At some point it'll become an anecdote. Here it is, becoming the anecdote, where I was just going, okay, calm. This is I'm either going to make it or I'm not. And I was laughing because of course my whole system is going, I'm late. I'm going to miss the flight and all the things that are going to happen because I'm going to miss that flight. But the reality is, what can I do? In this moment, all I can do is run as fast as I can. But how do I want to run? Stressed, angry, frustrated, or coaching myself, going, it's going to be whatever it's going to be, and by the end laughing and going, well, what can you do? It's already happened. I'm already late. Yeah. And, I got there. Big queue of people, of course. I'm not that late. I'm late, but I'm not that late. And it's like, right. So those 2 minutes of my life that I will never ever get back again, how did I live them?
That's so that's just like, I'm just imagining if was just your motto for life. Like really, if that's how you lived your life, is how did I live this minute? Yeah. And I've learned this a lot from you, Emma, through the things, and I catch myself constantly, like even just I'm here in France at the moment. I live normally in Barcelona, and I'm dog and cat sitting for 10 days in this beautiful place in France. And I've caught myself, there's been so many moments in the last few days about this exact thing. So, I took the dog for a walk, and there's a forest at the end of the street. It's amazing. It's beautiful. Pine trees, smells gorgeous, fresh air. I'm sort of in a suburb, so not really even in a city, so the air's beautiful. And I was ruminating about the last coaching session I had and what I was going to be doing for the thing and how I'm going to, and I caught myself going, what am I doing? I'm here in this beautiful place, and I'm up in my brain, like trying to fix the future, change the past. How can I take what I did and fix it for the future? And instead, I just took a breath. I thought of you, because I do regularly. You don't know that. I think about you're in my brain. And I was like, where are my feet? Like, what can I smell? What can I see? And I started looking around and noticing things in the forest, and, being present with the dog, who's this beautiful animal who just follows me everywhere and is just the most gorgeous creature. And I just was able to experience that moment. And did it change anything about my coaching from the other day or what I'm going to do? No. And in fact, probably I had space afterwards for my brain to actually decide what I was going to, what next action I was going to take. And then I got to enjoy that moment. I love that. And I'm very grateful for you for that, because you've taught me a lot about that with the work that we've done together, and learning to just, notice when I'm getting like this, and then just taking a breath to go, what's here, what's happening right in this moment.
And we do have two modes of mind. Okay, so we have on one, and neither of them are good or bad. It's just to have them balanced. We have on one side the thinking, doing, planning part of the brain. Okay, it keeps us working. We rather in this society bow down to this sort of the brain. Thinking, planning, judging, comparing. So we spend a lot of the mind going, what am I going to do tomorrow? How am I going to eat that? What does that person think when what are they saying that for? I wonder, oh God, what am I going to do in my life in 5 years' time? Oh my God, look at my body. I wish I could do something different. Blah, 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 blah. An endless stream of this chat that goes on. Okay. And it can be to do with the past, and it can be to do with the future, or it can be to do with the present. And although it's not wrong, excessive amounts of it can be very stressful. There you are walking in beautiful nature, and all you're doing is up in your head. You're not actually connected with where you are. So you can be in that mode, okay, which is much more conceptual. Thoughts are conceptual. They're concepts, they're ideas. And then you can be in the perceptual part of your mode, which is where you're receiving through your senses. So literally, if you think about it right now, how do you know you're here on this planet Earth? Because you can see, you're aware of the screen, you're aware of, the space around you. You can hear voices, you can maybe hear background noises. If I said to you right now, can you feel your bottom on the seat? So maybe a minute ago you didn't feel your bottom, but now I've brought your attention to it. There it is, right? You may have awareness of, if I said to you temperature in the room, suddenly, oh yeah, it's a bit chilly or it's a bit warm. Or... So we're constantly receiving information, and it is through our senses. And that is the first arrival of information to us. Then our brain picks it up and goes, oh, so that sound, like, so for example, I can hear a sound in the distance, that sound, which is literally airwaves just hitting my ear, that's all it is. The brain then goes, no, let me think about that. That's called a dog. We know dog, we've heard dog before, that matches that, that's dog. Okay, so then we start to interpret. Then we do another thing, which was then we maybe bring in a judgment. There's that flipping dog again. And now we've got suffering, right? Because we had an experience through our senses, we've identified it and labeled it, we're okay so far. And then we've started to step into the perceptual, the conceptual side of it. Our thinking mind has stepped in, it's judged it as wrong. And then maybe it goes into planning, must talk to the neighbors about that dog. Then here comes another thought, I know, but I really hate conflict. God, I wish I could stand up for myself more. This is the story of my life. And that other thing that happened at work, I should have stood up for myself there. And then, you know, and suddenly from one moment of one thought about something called a dog barking, you can spiral. We call this catastrophizing. Okay, so let's just see if we can come back to, there's a dog barking and I'm noticing my judgment around it. Look at that thought, which I didn't have any choice about, right? It just came in. That flipping dog again. It happened to me the other day. I was doing meditation and I asked my family to be quiet. You know, we've all got to have these home studios these days. Poor family, run, you know, creeping around in my house, and they weren't. They were completely making loads of noise, bashing about. And this, before I knew it, this thought was there. For goodness sake, you know, I've told you, can you be quiet? I'm in the middle of doing a session. And then I heard that thought and went, wow, can you hear that judgment there? And that's a moment, there's a tiny little moment, it's a tiny moment of suffering, right? I've stepped out of alignment with, here's reality, here's how I want it to be, back to that one.
And the reality being, there was a noise.
There was a noise. So then I went, how else can I work with this? Here's another thought. I'm really grateful that I have a family. And are they making that much noise in the grand scheme of things? No, no one's dying. It's just a bit of noise, might be a bit of thumping in the background. That's it. But that's it. That's the moment each time, is just catching those thoughts. And how do we know that we're out of alignment? Because we have this incredible thing that we're sitting in that tells you. So that pain in your shoulder, that ache in the jaw, that migraine, that problem with your hip, that whatever it is, it's like, this is the body going, hello, we're out of alignment. The problem is we've never learned that. So what we do is we go, oh, got that flipping headache again. Where are those tablets? And we never actually listen to the body. This is the body. We talk about body language, but this is the language of the body. It speaks to you in pain, in discomfort, in thumping, in pulling, in stretching. So the invitation, and so to say, if we literally had an alarm clock or a smoke alarm that went off every time there was a danger of fire, right? And then we just went, oh, that flipping alarm clock, I wish it would stop going off. It's been insanity. It's like, this thing is saving your life over here. This is why it is here. But we don't look at it like that. We just get really annoyed with our alarm clock going off all the time. So we step in, we notice that there's something here, and then we go, yeah, I'm out of alignment with reality. I'm not in acceptance, because this is how reality is and this is how I want it. They are not together. So what can I do? If you can change that reality, and it's, you know, a realistic change, then do it, right? But if you can't do it, which is the majority of our experiences, then what have you got? Then there is this opportunity to practice something called acceptance. And just to highlight that word acceptance, it can be really triggering for people, because they think, all right, well, that's it. I just have to give up now. I'll just let my rude boss forever be rude to me, and I will just float around in acceptance, which is really not acceptance at all. It's like,
we think of it like passivity, right?
Yeah, passivity, resignation, running away.
Yeah,
it absolutely is.
And also for some people, and this, I hear this a lot in my work, if I accept somebody's behavior, it means I'm condoning it.
Yeah.
which is another thing that you hear a lot. Well, I have to say, remind my partner that they, should eat better, because if I don't say anything, that means I'm condoning the fact that they eat pizza every night, or whatever that is. That's a condoning thing, right?
Yeah. And then you're getting into other people's business all the time rather than staying in your own business, as it
Well,
were.
and even for yourself, like if I don't beat myself up for, putting on weight, then I'm accepting I'm somehow, being,
Yeah.
yeah.
Although in actual fact, all you do is all you're doing is feeding the bully. So I'm just going to share another little experience of my life, which is stepping into that moment of realizing you've got this massive critical bully in your head. And I've got quite curly hair, trying to get to work, and this voice. I was like, the mirror being, especially for women, the worst place in the world. Like, flipping hair won't go straight. And I could hear this voice in my head, and I don't know why I ended up calling it the Irish nun, but it ended up being the Irish nun. I mean, nothing against Irish nuns, just if there's any listening, but why aren't you already at work? Everyone else is at work. Look at you, you're a mess. And then I had this other voice, which I then ended up calling the kind of the stroppy teenager, which was the one that was going, I don't want to go to work. I don't know how I've become the boss. I don't like this. And then I had this moment where I sort of, and I went, who are these people in my head? Because I'm here watching, this is pre-mindfulness. Now I would know what that is. But at the moment I was going, have I gone mad? Because I've got an aggressive bully in my head, and I've got a victim in my head. And actually, I'm over here. And actually, bully, you do have a point. Yes, I do need to get to work. And yes, you're right. I do need to maybe consider looking quite, pleasant. I'm the boss. But could you tone it down a bit? Because that is like ramped up far higher than I need. It's so aggressive. Could you just say it quietly to me? And you know what, little teenager over there, I know, maybe you don't want to be the boss today, but it's not the worst job in the world. You just got to go in and, and listen, and, it's okay. And it was like, wow, I don't know what I just did there, but something just happened that made me feel really happy. I stepped out of the story and looked after these voices. And if I can just bring in the book that I'm reading at the moment, which I highly recommend, which is called Whole Brain Living. It was written by somebody called Dr. Jill Bolt Taylor, who, if anyone's ever seen her, she's got an amazing YouTube TEDx talk. She was a neuroscientist. She basically was able to witness herself having a stroke, which affected the left hand side of her brain. And so she was very aware of these two parts of her brain coming in and out. This part of the brain is very much about being the individual, being a separate person. It's to do with language. It's aware of past and future. This part of the brain is very much more open, holistic, kind, generous, compassionate, in the flow. And so she was sort of blissing out in one moment, being in the right brain, completely connected with everything in the universe. And then the left-hand part of the brain going, stop doing that. You've got to be present. You've got to phone someone. You're having a stroke. It's an amazing video. But out of that, she created 2 books. The second book, which I'm reading now, talks about the different parts of the brain. And it's just useful to consider what part of the brain you're using. Are you using this part of the brain up here on the left-hand side, very analytical? I call it the secretary, it is the one that's going, get up, let's get organized. Have you done that? Have you planned? It can fall into a lot of judgment. It can be quite whippy, this one, if it gets out of control. Its emotional partner, as it were, which is the older brain, is what I call the Eeyore. Its favorite word is no. It can fall into sadness, depression, pity, poor me, anxiety, stress, anger, all those parts of us that we maybe want to lock away, the shadow side, but actually they need to be brought out and loved. We have the other side, which is the kind of, I call it the Tigger brain, which is excited, adrenaline rush, connect, let's do it. Yeah, let's jump on the trampoline. It's like my son, he's 8 years old. Woohoo, present moment, connected. And then the part that sort of regulates that is, like I say, the much more, I haven't really found a name for it yet, but sort of like a really mothering, nurturing voice that says, it's okay, sweetheart. So when I was having my moment of judgment earlier, it was like, I feel this bit down here is kicked off. Oh, it's all going wrong and I don't want this and I want it to be different. And it's like I can imagine this voice reaching down and going, I know, my love, let me hold you for a moment. Let me look after you. Yeah, tell me all about it. Yeah, and it's here, isn't it? And it's a bit of disappointment and it's in the heart, right? And then you can stay there, or you can even come and start activating this part of the brain, which is the right. Yeah, let's do something fun now. Let's stick some music on. Let's shake our body out. Let's, become present again with the present moment experience. And so it's a really fascinating book because she's talking from a completely scientific point of view, that we have literal areas that you can point to in the brain and go, now I'm running this circuitry, or I'm running this circuitry, it's this chemicals that are running this and this. But there's also a much more holistic, dare I say the word spiritual, side to her work, which is that we are much bigger than this little experience that turns up from time to time. So anxiety turns up, happiness turns up, fear turns up. We're constantly throughout the day. If you look at yourself today, you go, where am I now? Oh, I've gone into expectation, and now I'm just kind of connected with what's going on. Now I'm really in judgment. Now we're constantly, life is a constant move between all of these places. And when we're not suffering, great, just enjoy it. It's a wonderful bit of the roller coaster. But when we're in a place of suffering and stress, that's the moment we can step in and go, hang on a minute, let me see where my thinking is taking me here. And then we can maybe start to bring in some acceptance of what's actually happening.
That's really beautiful. I remember you telling me a story when we were talking the other day about sort of this idea of acceptance and the opportunity that when we take that moment to accept with what's happening and being in that present moment, the choices that we can make that are available to us. And it's a little, I've been reading a book also by a guy named Stan Tatkin, who called Wired for Love, and he talks a bit similarly about those things that you were describing. And he talks about the ambassadors and the warrior in the brain, and that the warrior is that sort of part of the brain that's stress response, all of those things, and most of us are reacting out of that. And the ambassador is that thinking part that gets to make choices and decisions, and one can't be operating when the other one is. And so learning to switch that off, and really that mindfulness is a way of switching that off. And there's also the noticing what's happening, so that the ambassadors can step forward and make a different choice. And you were telling me a story about Byron Katie and some socks. Yeah. And I'd love to have you share that story, because I think it's a really beautiful example of what's possible when we accept what is. And I would also add to this, and I don't know that this is necessarily your language, but that idea that that once you've accepted, you get to choose the meaning that you give things as well, in a way. It's like you get to choose that dog barking is freaking annoying, or you can choose that that's a dog barking. That we actually have that choice, but needing to step outside of that, those emotions are us. And I love that thing that you say, we are bigger than our emotions. I experience a lot of people that I work with that think they are their emotion. They think they are depression. They think they are whatever that is, imposter, I have imposter syndrome, like it's who they are. And we are so much bigger than that. And when we can start to really look at that, and that's that part of accepting what's going on, we can then make some different choices. So anyway, I actually tell that story because I love it.
Yeah, and on that point, just very quickly, it's really because we are always falling into those different spaces, and of wherever I am, anger, frustration, whatever, like to just rename it. So instead of like, I am really angry right now, it's just there is anger here. And already you're starting to step back one place and go, okay, there's me aware, remember that one, aware of in this moment, this happening. And so it's not so personal. Because it really is impersonal. If you really think it, when you really break it down, you have a thought and it's there in a moment. But then you become aware of that thought, and that starts a mechanism happening, and you become aware, you're aware of all of it. So can you use that awareness and go, I'm just aware there is a moment of sadness, anger, frustration here. You become then the observer of your experience rather than being completely the experience. You know, there's pain, but I am not my pain, as it were. Yeah, so the Byron Katie, Byron Katie is a wonderful teacher, I highly recommend. And she was talking about how she had a big life-changing experience, and she completely changed her life around. And she went back into her house kind of after this experience, and you know, her kids, as always, were throwing their clothes all over the floor, and she'd always spent her whole probably existence going, pick the clothes off the floor, pick, what are your socks doing on the floor again, come on, you know, nag, completely frustrated, completely out of, you know, here's reality, here's how I want it, right? And she just came at it at a completely different angle, like, their socks are on the floor, why is it their job to pick them up? What about I just pick them up? And so she just dropped this idea that her children should do this. Now, I know this is quite provoking, because that'll be a lot of people going, hang on a minute, you're supposed to teach your children how to do things properly, da, 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 da. But the reality of it is it wasn't working, right? And the reality of it was, I dropped this idea that this should be in any other way. I'm the one that wants the socks off the floor, so I will be the one that picks them up. And then she started to do it, and the kids went, wow, we're not getting, you know, told off for not doing the socks anymore. And they saw the joy with which their mother picked the socks up. Guess what? Bit by bit, they thought, well, that looks like she makes it look like it's kind of fun and nice and pleasant to have the place clean. Maybe I'll pick my socks up. Actually, I'm now discovering the joy of this clean space for myself. You know, at the end of if you really want to look at it and go, at the end of the day, she got what she wanted. But the point is, she just made herself happy in that moment. And her joy at just allowing things to be exactly as they were, funnily enough, the knock-on effect was, oh, actually, we just don't need to act in this way. And we're always in relationship. You throw your socks on the floor because you know mum's going to get them, right? And you've never gone past that. That's the only possibility. And yet when you start to change and do things in a different way, wow, look how things just start to move around you in a different way. So it's a really, you know, beautiful way of looking at that and thinking, you know, in your own life, how many things do you bash your head against every day and go, I wish this was different, I wish this was different, I wish this was different. And yet it is reality. So how could you actually meet it with curiosity? You know,
just love it.
What if it's not? And she sort of talks about it like it's their job. And I love that. It's like, that's their job. Their job is to throw the socks on the floor. And right now, because you feel it, your job is to pick them up. And eventually that might change. And so in mindfulness, we talk about the acceptance. It's the paradox of mindfulness. Acceptance precedes change.
It's beautiful, Emma, and it's so like in my work, I experience this as well, which is why I can, you know, why I often work with just one partner. We're not trying, you know, one person in a relationship, because that person can have a massive influence on their partner, even if the partner doesn't want to do anything, because of exactly this thing that, you know, it's kind of almost examining our beliefs, isn't it, really, at some level, you know, like I believe that I have, if I don't make my kids pick up their socks, then they won't learn how to, you know, ... And I remember a conversation I had with my father once. You know, I grew up on a farm, and we used to you know, take our lunch to school, and we also learned piano, and we'd go to piano lessons from our school, and so we'd have to take our music, and we didn't live a long way out of town. It was about a 15-minute drive, but you know, we would forget something. You know, some days you forget your lunch, or you'd forget your music books, and so, you know, you'd get the school to call mum, because in those days we didn't have mobile phones, but, you know, the school would call mum and say, you know, I'd say, oh, mum, I forgot my blah, blah, blah. And she would bring it into us. And my father used to get really angry with my mother because she wasn't teaching us to be responsible by, you know, if we forgot our lunch, well, we go hungry. That was his kind of way of teaching. And years went by, and in my 40s, the early 40s, I was talking to my, or late 30s, was talking to my parents, and I was asking them, as I have you always had a lot of curiosity about the things my parents thought and whatever. And I said, what are the things that you wish had been, that you'd done differently with us when you were bringing us up? And I want to say at this point that all of my siblings and I, there's 5 of us, at least 4 of us, feel responsible for the world. Like, we're always, taking care of everybody and, very giving, loving, kind of natured people. And my father said, well, I think we should have taught you to be more independent. And because your mother used to, take the things to the school, and she shouldn't have done that. And I said to him, well, that's really interesting, Dad. So are you saying that none of us are independent and responsible? And he went, oh, no, not at all. But it's like that belief that he had, that that's the way it had to be done. And it's the same in the relationships. I see, a woman saying, well, I can only be happy or feel loved when my partner does this, and limiting all the options that there are to experience the joy, the joy that Byron Katie had of picking up the socks. She found joy in that because of the meaning that she gave the activity that she was doing. And being able to bring that requires that moment of acceptance first, I can see, and then being able to go, okay, what else could I do to experience what it is that I want to experience? And if I want to experience more love from my partner, nagging them to give me more love is not working. This is what he does, or this is what she does. How can I bring out more of that? And how can I, it just gives you that sort of ambassador side of the brain, the opportunity to come forward and be creative around having more of what you want to feel as well.
Yeah. And they say, it's what is it? It's the definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result.
Yeah.
It's like, it's not working.
Yeah.
So then you have to question, well, where's this thought that this is the only way of doing it? And can I start to get curious around other ways of doing things in life? Yeah. I'd like to just read, if I may, just I'm aware of the time. I'd just like to read, it's very short.
It's been so much fun. You always have so much value. It's hard to in a short time.
I know there's some questions bouncing around in chat as well. So maybe there's something at the end there. But I just wanted to read this thing by Jack Cornfield, who's a wonderful meditation mindfulness teacher. He says about acceptance: acceptance does not mean inaction or resignation. We may need to respond strongly at times. From a peaceful center, we can respond instead of react. Unconscious reactions create problems. Considered responses bring peace. With a peaceful heart, whatever happens can be met with wisdom. Peace is not weak, it is unshakable.
Oh, very nice.
Beautifully written, right?
Absolutely beautiful.
So it's not, like I say, lay down and die. It's right, let me look after this first. This is all I can control. This is all I can't control any of that out there. I think I can, but I can't. All I can control is this that's inside. Let this become calm and peaceful. And then out of that place of calm and peace, then speak, do, act, be in the world. And Gandhi, be the change you ought to see in the world. It's like, this is how you do it, right? You've got big plans for the world, but how are you looking after the interior first? Get that straight, and then you may be able to move out a little bit more into the world and do what you need to do.
That's beautiful. Emma, I might get you later to share that Jack Canfield quote with me, and I can post it in my Facebook group. We're going to. Do you have a few more minutes, Emma?
I do.
So if any of you want to stay on, I wanted to make sure we had a little bit of an opportunity to answer questions. And there is one already, Feruz. Feruz, is that how I say your name? Did I get that correct?
That's right.
Yes, thank you. So I've just seen here that you've said that the CEO of Google, Sundar Pichai, said, respond, do not react, which is very much, it's we only can react when we are in stress, anxiety, and not accepting the moment. And not very many great things have happened in the world out of reacting, unless you maybe save somebody's life because you suddenly reacted when a tree was falling on them. But other than that, Feroz has asked a question: can we or should we accept all sorts of things? And Feroz, I don't know if you want to unmute yourself and kind of, if you had something in particular in mind around that, or that you wanted to.
Sure, absolutely. First of all, thank you very much for an amazing presentation, though I joined a bit late, but I was able still to be on the same page with what was going on. My question is, you were talking more about, I think, psychological stuff. So like from psychological perspective, should we accept all kinds of let's say, things that are thrown at us, whether negative or positive? And most of the times, I feel challenged to accept people who are not easily, negotiable, or they're not quite easygoing. And because I run an association, I'm the founder of ETA Uzbekistan, and I have to, communicate with all sorts of people, either locally, regionally, nationally, or even internationally. And at times I feel a bit of a challenge to, find something in common between us. So my question is, like, as a leader, from leader's point of view, should I accept, like, I'd like to personalize the question, should I accept all sorts of things, especially the negative things? Should I embrace them, embrace the negativity? I hope my question is clear.
Great question. I love it.
Thank you.
Emma.
Yeah. How do you accept people who are rude? Could be maybe the summation of that. No. Well, can you change them? No. There's a reality. Here's how I want it. And so when you're constantly bashing your head against this person should be, you're totally there, right? You know it, you feel it in your body. That's why you're asking the question, because it's stressful. You're finding it hard. So, acceptance is baby steps. So that first of all, we have an absolute knee-jerk reaction. No, this is totally not right. And then it's the invitation is to keep going back in and going, can I be with this in some way? Can I notice my own reaction to the story I am telling myself about this person being rude? There's a situation happening, then I'm telling myself a story about it. They should be respecting me more, or they shouldn't be saying X, Y, and Z, shouldn't they? Well, that's what they're doing. That's the reality. So what can I look after here? Me, this inside. What's the story that rudeness is telling me? That I'm not being respected, that I'm not worthy of respect, that they don't like me in some way, for example, etc., etc. And so as you start to just dig a little bit deeper, you start to realize it's not so much about the other person, it's about the story that you're telling yourself about this experience that you seem to be having and how you perceive it. And how you perceive it is a lot to do with your old patterning, So I totally get you. I used to be terrified of anyone who was a little bit kind of rude or judgmental, because it totally triggered me, because it was my past. And now with experience, I still, of course, meet those people, but I meet them in a very different way. Like, I'm just curious, look at the way that they're acting right now. That's nothing to do with me, because they do this with everybody. It's much less personal. And if I start to step into my story again of like, wow, they ignored me there, or and I go, can you hear that story? The story's kicking off again. The story is they're ignoring me. I'm not worthy of being listened to. And now I'm suffering. The reality is I don't even know why they're not listening to me. I actually don't know. It may be to do with the fact that they've got a very busy mind. The fact that they do this with a lot of people. Or maybe it is me. And even if it is me, maybe that's okay, because we're all looking at each other through our own filters, right? I wrote something the other day, we're not each other's cup of tea, right? I'm not everyone's cup of tea. Some people love me, some people hate me. It's got nothing to do with me.
Yeah.
It is completely the way that they perceive the world I happen to be like their auntie that they loved, great, they love me. I happen to be like their old friend who did the dirty on them, they hate me. They just don't like the way I talk, they don't like the way I dress. It's like, you know, what can you do? And we do the same to other people. You know, we don't love everybody. We prefer some people and not others. So it's going to happen, but we can just take it a lot less personally. And what we can do is just look after ourselves. What's the story I'm telling myself? How is this making me feel? This is a moment of anxiety. This is a moment of stress. Let me breathe into it. And little by little, instead of being quite so connected to that story, you start to extract yourself, not only from your own emotions and just become more aware of your thoughts and your emotions as they float past and forward, but you do it with other people as well. It's like you become infinitely fascinated with people. This person's amazing. And on the last little note, I bet if you ever could find out that person's backstory, you would have absolute compassion for that person.
Yeah.
Because there's a great little analogy, which is when you're walking the forest and there's a dog and you go and you put your hand down to pet it and it growls at you and it bares its teeth and you go, oh God, what a horrible dog, right? Judgment. You're having a reaction. You don't like this dog. And then you look down and you see that that dog's leg is caught in one of those traps. And you realize that dog's in pain. And so now how do you feel? Right. Of course it's growling. Of course it's in pain. And so people who are growling, ignoring you, being rude, whatever you perceive in the world, which let's face it is only your perception, is like there's so much more going on than this moment. This is just like the iceberg. And underneath there's a whole other thing going on. And so then you can start to turn towards these people. And instead of falling into a place of judgment, you start to realize, oh yeah, this is another person that's in a lot of pain right now. They're in their fight and flight mechanism. They've got dealing with a high level of stress. And this is how they act out of it. How could I not add to that by judging them, but how could I actually accept them as they are? Because maybe you start to change things for them by your own acceptance.
And that's that beautiful thing about what being accepting is not about condoning that behavior if they've been rude to you, but it is about, you know, that it's sometimes hard, isn't it, Emma, to tease out that thing about what is the truth, like what is the reality and what's the story, because our story is so connected. I remember a personal development program I did years and years ago when I was 18, and they talked about this. They said, you know, that's the ceiling, that's the floor, and everything else is your story. You know, and I often think about it, that's the ceiling and that's the floor, and everything else is your story. And being able to have that, get to that place of, you know, what's my experience of that? How have I reacted to what that person has said or done? Then enables you to step into that curiosity about who is this human being really, or what is this person really communicating, or what's the challenge, and what am I going to choose about that? Do they need to be listened to? You know, you can then, you know, how could I listen to this person in a way that they feel heard, or how can, you know, it gives you a lot more power, really, essentially, to create relationships with people that differ, which I think is a massive important thing in this world right now, because we don't listen to each other. If you have a different opinion to me, then we don't speak to each other. And I think it's really, that comes from this thing that you're talking about, and you know, so from the bigger picture, how important it is for each of us, I think, to take responsibility for doing this work, doing this stuff of being in acceptance of what's real, noticing what our story is and taking ownership of that, so that you can then connect with other human beings in a way that moves conversations forward, that gets things resolved, that gets things changed, instead of always fighting from that place of I have to defend my position and make sure that everything's safe in the world.
And curiosity. What's bigger than fear? Curiosity, right? Fear is massive. It's the biggest thing we can fear, because fear is connected with our survival, which is like life or death. It can't get bigger than that. But when we become curious around fear, guess what? We're so much bigger than fear. Wow, hello fear, you've turned up again. You're a thought, you're a physical sensation, you know. And when you, maybe with curiosity, you can then move into a conversation with somebody who is difficult and go, I'm noticing when you say this, I feel it kind of creates something in me, and I'm just wondering what's happening for you. I'm really curious to hear about that. And so it's just like a completely open space. There's no judgment there. It's just like, let's just be curious. What's happening? I have this curious experience over here. What's your experience over there? Sometimes those really difficult conversations can be the most connecting of all. And this is also the irony of it all. I know from personal experience, having worked in a company, like, oh God, I've got to have that tricky conversation again. How can I come to this like open? You talk, you just speak. I will shut up. I will listen. I will take notes. I will calmly listen to what you have to say. I will then speak myself, my own truth. And let's see. And quite often, just allowing people to speak, it already takes the heat off. And then you find some place in the middle where you can join. But if you can do it where you're not judging, we're all terrified of being judged because we judge ourselves all the time. So we're terrified of being judged. So if we can actually meet people without judgment, it is such a relief for people. They can actually relax and go, I can actually say what I need to say. And then all sorts of miraculous things can appear, all sorts of stuff that you didn't even know was there because they've never had the chance to actually speak it before. And you as well.
It's great. Jessica has a question.
I'm really aware Jessica's like, I haven't got enough hands.
I was worried we're going to start seeing her feet in a minute as well.
Go,
Jessica.
This has probably been the most valuable. I go to like so many Zooms. I go to like 5 a week, and this is probably the most valuable one in 2 years.
Wow. Yay, Emma.
Just like the wisdom, and I knew Emma, you're amazing. I know Charlene for 6 years. So lovely that you guys are talking about these things. And I had a client this morning. I'm a Gestalt therapist, and I didn't know like how to answer this. And I wonder if you two wise women have a little bit more insight than I do. It's like your responsibility for yourself. Like a family member has a mental illness. They do not take responsibility for themselves. What role do I or a human have to take care of someone else who's not able to do it for themselves? I know this is a big question, but I don't know if you have any experience or any thoughts on that or anything.
Emma,
gosh, I don't know. I mean, that's because you kind of need to know a little bit more the details of the situation, I think, really. I think, at the end of the day, we have this, we work on different levels, don't we? We have an intelligence level and we have an intuitive level. And often this mighty brain gets in the way of something that's more intuitive. So I think the first thing is that you need to just actually come to yourself and go, what's all of this teaching me, right? What is it? Because there's what's happening and there's what's really happening, like what's the lesson going on here? Is it I need to step up and actually I'm feeling like I need to do something, and actually I normally don't do something out of a place of fear, so I need to move and act in some way, or I'm really heightened and I need to calm myself down before I can act. Like what is going on with me first of all? Because often when we get a handle on that, the answer sort of starts to become clear. And so a lot of people live in fear of, well, what will I do if, and what will I do if? And it's like, well, you do the same as what you do now. If you can get yourself into a calm place, normally from that calm place, you know what to do. It becomes obvious. And things, so there's no, I'm not giving you a direct answer because there's no concrete thing to talk about here, but it's more like it's a way of arriving at all of our problems, of all of our situations. It's like, am I coming at this with fear and anxiety and stress? And therefore I'm going to be very reactive, as Charlene was saying, or am I coming from that calm place where I'm going to wisely respond? Which one would you like dealing with this conversation? I think probably we'd like the wise one, right? Yeah. And then from there, that person, and you see those people in life, you see the panickers, and then you see the ones that go, hang on a minute, let's just take a moment, let's just think about this, let's be calm, and then if we don't feel like that, we look at them and go, that's what I aspire to. And that is what you can become yourself if you basically start to look after yourself a little better and do some practice, bring yourself into that calm place.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I also, without more information, but it's a little hard to respond, but I would sort of add to that I think, this idea of self-responsibility sometimes in and of itself is can become a way of stressing ourselves around, I have to be responsible for, whatever. And, when there's a mental illness involved, obviously it's really challenging for everybody. And again, just getting into that, I think self-responsibility is, if somebody can't take care of themselves, your job then is to look at where you are in your body, in your process around that. Is it that I have to take care of this person, that I should, and again, really what Emma said, that resistance to what is, quite often when there's somebody around us that has any kind of challenge, there's a resistance that's there, that's present. And often again, that label of a mental illness, we forget that there's a human being in there as well sometimes. I think people get seen as their illness rather than some curiosity around who that person is underneath there, and what could they be capable of as well. And so, yeah, I think there's, again, it's a bit hard to say exactly, but I think there's a lot about that acceptance of what you're experiencing about that person, so that you can then, as Emma said, really make a choice about how you participate in that person's life, and what your roles and responsibilities are too. If you're a parent of someone, of a young child that has a mental illness, that might be a different choice or relationship that you would have to somebody who's perhaps a partner or a friend or an adult. And looking at expanding the unit, I call it, expanding, who's in that person's life, so that it doesn't become something that you're being totally responsible for one other person, but that it becomes something that you expand the people around them as well, that can support in what it is that they need.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that helps, again, because without knowing a few more details, but we have one last, is that, Jessica, is that sort of, yep, great, perfect. Firdaus has one last question. What is the extent of acceptance, since we are humans, limited capabilities? I love it. This is a good one for you, Firdaus, right? This whole thing of acceptance, it's beautiful.
Yeah, that's it, right.
And do you mean as in, can we accept everything? Is that what you're asking?
Say it again.
Is your question that is there any, can we accept everything? Is that what you're asking?
Yes.
Is there anything that we can't accept?
Yeah, exactly.
What do you think?
Well, you're just deflecting the question.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm curious. I'm curious. Before I answer, what do you think? Is there something that can't be accepted?
That's $1 million question.
Well,
my point is, I still wonder, because this question is not in vain. Like, I'm not just asking you, throwing a random question at you. This has a purpose, because all of my questions, are drawn from my personal experience. So I'm just, trying to get the answer to one of the problems that I'm having in terms of communication. Do I have to really accept, anything and everything? And what is the extent that I could, let this happen? The extent of acceptance.
I think
like how far can I go in accepting all kind of people and all kind of negativity?
Yeah, I mean, let's just clarify this word acceptance, because it still sounds a little bit like it's like, oh, I'll just let anything happen. It's totally not that. It's what it is. Acceptance is going, this is actually happening, right? So often we go, like run away from it, or denial, or don't even see it, because acceptance is like, I am totally awake and aware in this moment to what is happening. And I'm stepping out of my judgment place for a moment, okay, to find my calm place. This is not, back to these ones, life, how I want it. It's like, let this not be a place of stress. Let this be the truth. The truth of the matter is, it has happened. So now what? now from a calm place, rather than from a place of this is wrong and it shouldn't have happened. It doesn't help us, does it? It shouldn't have happened. What's the use in saying that? It has happened. We're in judgment and judgment and judgment. You know, it's like the spilt milk. You can stand around and go, this shouldn't have happened. Why did you do it? You're such an idiot. This, you know, out of my fault, I put the milk there. It was your fault. Your elbow hit it. You know, it doesn't get you anywhere. What do you actually need to do? You need to act, right? We're not just going to leave it on the floor forever. We're going to go, this has happened. This is this thing that has happened. We're going to clear it up. I'm not going to be stressed about clearing it up. And now I'm going to make a new choice. The next time I put the milk down, I'm going to say to you, by the way, the milk is near your elbow. Okay. Now I know this is really baby language, but it is sort of the same thing for everything. Hi, Jessica.
Hi, Jessica.
You know,
thank you for coming.
So it's like going, this is reality. Now, how am I going to work with it in a calm, neutral place rather than in a place of stress and anxiety? Because that's only going to make it worse. And
I think it's sometimes harder to see that when it's in relationships with people. And, you know, so Feroz, I hear that some of the questions that you're having, I'm going to make a bit of an assumption just because we don't have a long time to go into it, but that as people behave in a particular way with you and you're not wanting to accept that behavior. Is that what I understand? And I think how this fits with what Emma's saying and what I find as well is that when you feel that they shouldn't have said that or they shouldn't be behaving that way, that is the part that you're not accepting. It's not the acceptance that, okay, they're allowed to treat me that way. It's that they did it. That's what they did. It's like the acceptance of they said that thing to me. Everything else about they shouldn't have said it, it's disrespecting me, you know, that's the non-acceptance. That's the story. That's the bit that's not the ceiling or the floor. The ceiling or the floor is they said these words. And that's the part that when you can accept that that's what they said, then from that place you can calm your system enough to then go, I wonder what's behind that. Perhaps that's what you choose to do, you know, to get curious about what are they, you know, what would prompt them to say something like that, or how could I respond to that instead of react to it. So it's not an acceptance of, yeah, you can just treat me as you want. That's the kind of that's not the kind of acceptance. It's more about, this is what they said, and everything else about what you say about it, your story about it, that's the bit that's the not accepting. That's the bit that you have control of it. And then you can say, you know, I'm not actually willing to have you speak to me like that, if that's what you want to say. But it's about that's coming from a place of response rather than reacting. Does that make sense? And,
yes,
and
totally.
Emma, would you?
I would absolutely agree with that, because actually at the moment it sounds like there needs to be a conversation and there's something that's blocking the conversation, right? And so the reaction isn't actually coming from a knee-jerk reaction to attack the person. It's doing the opposite. It's going, oh, I really don't want to have this conversation and I will just try and escape it. But meanwhile it's still bothering you and bothering you and bothering you. And so it's like, well, how can we come and meet this person in a very neutral way and absolutely say what you need to say, but from a very calm place, which hasn't got all the heat and emotion behind it. You know, just as if I had to go and talk to this person or people, you know, I would have no relationship to them. So I would just be able to be quite neutral with them to say this is acceptable and this really isn't. Do you know what I mean? But when we're all worked up about it, it's very difficult, because it can be, we're now in a place of fear again. What will these people think? Will it create more problems? You know, and then the whole chess playing thing. So if I do this, then that will happen. It's like, get to that nice neutral place first, and then from there you can actually speak and have boundaries and say your thing.
And it's a practice. And you'll probably none of us will ever perfect it, because then it's time to move to the next life probably. But it is a practice, and it's what
doesn't kill you cures you, as they say, right?
Yeah,
just an endless healing process.
Yeah. Does that answer your question a little bit, Feroz?
Yes,
Yeah.
totally.
I really appreciate your questions. They're really insightful and really great, because it's a delicate balance. It's a delicate understanding, because also the language we have, even that word acceptance brings up a whole lot of stuff for us that we can't accept, and just being with the idea that what's in your control, as Emma said, we can't control what's outside of ourselves, and sometimes we struggle to control even what's going on in here, but starting to break free from that and have that gap that you talk about, Emma, right, between this is what happened, mindfulness, breath, what can I make that mean, what's how can I respond, what is it that how can I come from a place of my own truth and my own
and I think that maybe that's a good thing just to end on, is that really, certainly from my experience with mindfulness, it's that a moment of actually having a choice. We've done the same thing over and over again. Some of it has served us and some things have not served us, and if those things have not served you, now there is an opportunity to question what you're doing, how you're reacting, how you're responding, and start to realize you do have a choice to do things in a different way. Before, there was no possibilities. Now there's possibilities.
Beautiful. Yeah. So we've gone way over time, but
we knew we would.
This being we're bad enough on our own, Emma, let alone together. But thank you so much for those that joined us, and for those who didn't, I hope you enjoy the replay. You're going to have to put aside an hour and a half instead of an hour, but well, hopefully it's worth it for you, or fast forward through the bits that you want to. But thank you so much for those that joined us. Emma, I know that we had I wanted to give you the opportunity to talk about how people can find you if they would like to take this conversation further or to work with you. So if you want to quickly share that.
Quick little blurb. So I offer mindfulness-based stress reduction course, which is an 8-week course, which you can take with me live, online, one-to-one. Or I'm also offering a course because, just to say very quickly, I work with perimenopausal women. It's a very stressful time for women. So I also have a 4-week course, which is online, it's self-paced. And finally, every Sunday, I have a morning session. It's like a drop-in session. So you can join me at 10 o'clock to 11, that's Central Eastern Time, so Madrid time. All of that information is on my website, which you can see there, mbsr-mindfulness.com, or you can email me at info@mbsr-mindfulness.com. Okay,
beautiful. And as someone who's worked with Emma, I highly recommend her as a mindfulness teacher, and I think you've had an amazing experience of her today. And Emma, I just want to really thank you from the bottom of my heart for what you do, for what you contribute to the world, to the people that come into contact with you, and for the shift that you're creating in the world. And thank you so much for being here today and sharing that with all of us.
Thank you. Well, thank you, Charlene, for the opportunity and just for creating this wonderful space. And I know you're doing brilliant work as well. So I hope some people are inspired maybe to get in contact with you. I think it's all important. We're all on this endless healing process. So whatever we can do to support ourselves is brilliant. So thank you.
You're very welcome. And do you want to finish with a quick mindfulness moment?
Let's just do let's do 1 minute of something, okay? A little thing just to finish it off. So maybe you just want to sit up, have your shoulders broad and wide. Imagine you're sitting on a throne. Okay, close your eyes or lower your gaze. And just take a long, slow, light breath in. And just let it go slowly. So we've been using our minds a lot, lots of thoughts, lots of ideas. But what about now just stepping to this present moment? Feeling the breath moving in the body. And perhaps just bringing to mind, right now in this moment, one good thing. So maybe it's just this moment of having some time on your own. Maybe it's an appreciation for this body, and all the things it can do. Maybe it's the place where you are, the fact that you have a home or a workplace, food in the fridge, clothes in the cupboard, all those things that we can just take as given. And perhaps just taking a moment to appreciate those good things that you have in your life. And we have a tendency for negativity. So let's see if we can balance things up by looking at what is already here, not in some future moment, but right here, right now. That's good. And again, just taking a lovely long, deep breath in, breathing all the way down to the ends of your toes. And on the out breath, just letting go. And again, maybe as you start to open your eyes, just again, looking around at your space, perhaps with a sense of gratitude for everything you already have.
Thank you, Emma.
Okay, so thank you all very much.
Have
Have a
a
lovely day.
beautiful day and rest of the week. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.